What's up, everybody? The saltiest Gaijin here. What you're about to be seeing is a replay of the first episode of our new MTG podcast, the unnamed MTG podcast, name to be determined at a later time. There were some audio issues, sadly, with the recording that my Streamlabs exported into my files. So unfortunately, Drabynoops is a little hard to hear, but of course you can catch us every other week on Sunday. You can check out our channel, twitch.tv/thesaltiestgaijin, as well as twitch.tv/Drabynoops, if you want to stay up to date and see when we go live. Enjoy the video. So we're going to change it up. We're going to talk a little bit more. You and I primarily play Arena these days.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just the truth. Between, like you mentioned, your game stores are so far away, and plus, you're relatively new down there to Florida yet, so you moved during the pandemic.
Yeah, a little over a year, and my schedule is inconsistent right now with the job I'm currently at, so it's not like, oh yeah, I can drop down every Saturday at this time kind of deal. It's like, sometimes I work Saturdays and sometimes I don't.
Yeah, I feel you, and I'm at where I'm at, like, the closest game store I can go to that even has the organized play. Closest one is a 25 to 30 minute drive, depending on traffic, because I have to go to another city to go play, like, that's to go play Modern, and if I want to go to the store that I would really want to go to play Magic on Friday nights, it's a 50-minute drive from my apartment, so that's not, I can't always make that trip. I do try to set at least the Friday night aside to go do that kind of stuff, but that's just because it's a good way to get out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
But Arena, I stream Arena, of course, as everybody probably who watches my channel knows that. Unless you're new here and would never seen me stream Arena somehow, or heard me talk about it. But we're going to talk, I think a really interesting thing about Arena is historic. It is a very divisive format now. A lot of people for a long time thought it was a joke, and were like, this isn't like a serious format people can play, and then like we had like serious tournaments, and now we have people like me who were considered format specialists. Because I played Historic since it became a format when it was a joke, but because for a long time
it definitely was at the beginning.
It was a joke. The best deck day 0 of Historic was Mono Black Cat Oven. Like we didn't even put that shit with Mayhem Devil yet. Like that was before that was like anybody was really playing that. Everyone thought like, oh, that's cool, but like we can't really go into red. The mana base kind of sucks, but. I think what we're going to talk about is the top 5, well, we'll say card cycles, maybe mechanics might be a good way, because they're a little bit of a nice broad topic, but just top 5 things we want to see brought to Historic. And I want to start, we'll kind of go back and forth and talk about them, but I want to start with you, Drabynoops. What's your number 5 thing you'd want to bring to Historic?
So my number 5 thing, and I'm keeping this at number 5 because this is very much a personal thing. This is just this is just for me, and it's Shirai, Shizo's Caretaker.
Of course.
It has become my pet deck. My pet deck used to be Muldrotha, but my Muldrotha deck was also like curated to my playgroup. And now that I don't have that playgroup, I just don't really care about that deck. It can sit on the shelf.
That's fair.
I
get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
And if we never get Shirai, I'll just play Lisa, which is not as good but has a similar effect. Like,
yeah.
But it's and it's Kamigawa. Like, I mean, you maybe release some old Kamigawa cards.
Historic anthologies Kamigawa, maybe?
Yeah.
Love to see it. I'd love to see some more historic anthologies. We haven't gotten one of those in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my number 5, I was kind of split on this, because I get why some people might not want one. And I get there's some reasons why I might not want, so I kind of split my number 5 spot. Is that I would actually like to see fetch lands, or more specifically, just the Khans fetch lands. I don't want all 10, I just want 5. And there's a reason for that. So I played Modern back before Khans of Tarkir, right?
Yep.
That was back in the days where we played with black and white proxies.
Yes.
The double feature of modern,
A
if you
double
will.
feature. Yep.
But what was really interesting back then was that you couldn't just play any 3-color combination. Like,
Hmm.
and like even a deck like Jund, the only reason Jund existed was because you just had enough good cards to justify playing a fetch land mana base for your Jund deck that includes both Marsh Flats, Misty Rainforest, Scalding Tarn. Like you had what was effectively the shittiest mana base you could think of, and
It was so good.
it was still a good deck. And sometimes you'd even play white because of how bad your mana base was.
Yeah.
You'd play white because it gave you Lingering Souls, and technically it made some of your fetch lands slightly better. It was like the funniest thing ever, to be honest. But I thought it was so interesting because one of the things that breeds creativity in these non-rotating formats are restrictions. But I do think that the mana bases in Historic may be a little too restricted because the only decks that seem to ever do well over a long period of time are the ones that have been given access to like their fast land, or they like your blue white, and so the tapped lands really aren't a drawback to the kinds of cards you're playing. And since the addition of the slow lands, the blue white deck's gotten probably a little too good almost with its mana base relative to the mana bases of other decks that aren't monocolored. So I would like to see those. Alternatively, I get why that would be a concern, especially with New Capenna coming up, and it's rumored the other 5 triomes are in New Capenna. I get why people might be a little reluctant. So I think maybe a little more reasonable might be the other 5 fast lands would be my other number 5 spot. The Scars of Mirrodin, your Blackleaf Cliffs. Because the one reason we haven't gotten those lands again is because their names are like super unique to Mirrodin, like Seachrome Coast.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is weird because I could see there being a Seachrome Coast in Kamigawa, so
Yeah.
could have been free roll wizards. I expect my royalty check in the mail, but
I mean, we've got a free Mirrodin at some point, right? So
yeah, well, the Phyrexians are becoming the big bads of the game, so we're bound to be back to Mirrodin at some point. So I actually think it's fairly reasonable that we see the fast lands on Arena in like the next, and in Standard possibly in the next like year and a half to 2 years. So I think that would be a reasonable thing, and I think it would be a good thing because I can tell you like there's a lot of decks that I've played recently that I was just like I would murder for Blackleaf Cliffs in this mana base. Like,
yeah.
like it's that bad. Like I think it would open the doors for a lot of other 2-color combinations to finally be able to break out of the shell and the hole that is their shitty mana bases. All right, but you're number 4, Drabynoops.
Yeah, so and this is going to be another one that it's like I'm not super I'm not like disappointed if this isn't a thing, right? I just don't understand why we can't get the supplementary products for Commander. It's
Okay.
because I mean a lot of those maybe they won't get played, but maybe they'll open up historic brawl potentials. Sure. Like I also want to see what's that the I can't, why do I not remember the name of it? It was like my favorite card out of the Commander's decks that came out. The white enchantment, just like what could that do if you threw that into historic?
What does it do?
It's the one that turns a creature into or a creature or a vehicle or whatever into a vehicle with code 5.
Yeah, the empty from the Kamigawa.
Yeah.
Neon Dynasty Commander deck. So it's I'll pull up the card to read to folks real quick. MTG Goldfish. You can keep talking about it.
Yeah, no, but it's one of these things where it's like, okay, it's a lot of times they're just new cards, right? I'm not saying like, oh, we reprinted Soul Ring in a Commander deck, so I want Soul Ring in Historic. I'm not saying that, but like, you know, they got some newer stuff in here. Like I'm gonna pull up the Commander previews real quick. It's okay. Like, why can't we get Shorikai the Genesis engine? What, you know, just the vehicle that can be your commander. Like, who is that hurting? And kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, access denied, which is like the treasure that the counter spell that creates treasures, but it makes thopter tokens instead. It's, I mean, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, like uh Yoshimaru, Ever Faithful. I mean, yeah, it's got partner, but like that's but outside of that, it just gets more powerful as you play legendary permanents. Why wouldn't you want to play that in like maybe like a
Mm-hmm.
Naya Bard class deck?
Sure. Oh yeah.
Give you know
No, I get where you're coming from. Yeah, there's a lot of cards like, or even like the reprints. I think would be one thing to look at.
mhm.
Like the commander. Like I think that for like the benefit of historic, it would be really nice to see these come in because like just look at like the I have the buckle up deck card list in front of me.
Sure,
Like
sure, yeah.
Jace Architect of Thought would be a really interesting card to add to the format, even if it only gets played in Brawl, right?
Yeah.
Dispatch would be a really fun card to have in the format.
Mhm.
And like that narrow application can really only be played in one place. I do like Access Denied, and that card would probably only be Brawl playable. But you have also
Well, then
like
there's
Release to Memory.
yes, that's I was going to mention that next as well. Like
Like that feels like a card that you could really easily include, and it would be, honestly, it would be quite good. Or even Kappa Cannoneer, which I apparently hear is really good in Legacy, uh,
really?
of or Vintage or somewhere. But I don't know.
Oh,
One of
so
these Commander exclusive cards is like apparently just dummy good.
oh, actually, yeah, it probably would be. I mean, Swift reconfiguration, obviously, yeah, but Kappa Cannoneer, that seems nuts. It has ward and improvise.
Yeah, so it could be really really cheap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really, really, and then you're already making artifacts in a deck that
Mhm.
would want it. Yeah,
But even another one was like Organic Extinction, where it was just like a wrath for non-artifact creatures that costs
yes,
10 with improvise, or
yes,
Universal Surveillance seemed like another interesting one. Like there's so many cards that you look at on here. Like this would have been an easy way to put like Port Town, and I get like they'd have
yeah,
to have all five to really justify doing that. But at the same time, it's like there's just cards in here that they could sort of sneak in, almost like the anthologies where they're getting like those Pioneer Legal cards in, because
yeah.
they do tend to put a lot of Pioneer Legal cards into these or more recent cards. Would be probably the best way to talk about it. And then because the other thing that they could do is they could then put a code in to the
Yeah,
decks, and people can redeem them. So I think this is a great pick actually, where you've
yeah, because
selected
it's
here.
one of those things where it's like I'm not gonna get worked up over them not doing it, but historic is often kind of like viewed as like arenas modern, but like in reality, if we're just curating the format and putting anthology cards in here, isn't it more applicable to call it like arena's legacy? So we could just do
Mhm.
these supplementary products anyways.
No, I agree with you. I think it would be. I think that is the way it should be looked at. Is that this is like the Arena Legacy, not the Arena Modern, and
Hmm.
that's why. And the power level of the format is super high to begin with. Like a
Yeah,
lot of people don't necessarily realize the power level of the format is like pretty distinctly, like it's more powerful than Pioneer. And
yeah.
that's a format with a bigger card pool, and
Hmm.
that's because of some of the specific additions. And I think at this point, like, there's things that you could make legal here. Like, I think there's cards on the ban list that should be unbanned, like Lightning Bolt, Swords to Plowshares would probably be fine at this point. Maybe Swords to Plowshares might be too good, but that's only because there's already solid blue-white control decks.
Yeah,
But I think Dispatch is a perfect example. That's a removal
yeah.
spell that is so conditional to having
Hmm.
Metalcraft that like why not include it? Like
Yeah.
like give the blue white affinity deck a bump because like the control deck can't play Dispatch very effectively, but
No.
it can is an artifact based aggro deck that has a lot of artifact creatures. I think that would be perfectly within reason. Were there any other specific notes that you had on maybe cards from here, just while we are talking
It,
about these decks?
I mean, not from the new one. I remember I think it was either the last commander set or the one before it that I saw a card and I was just like, why can't I get this?
Hmm.
Why why is this for some reason deemed completely unreasonable? I'm trying to see. Commander. Was it Crimson Vow or Midnight Hunt? I don't remember. But yeah, it was I think it was a blood token card.
So it would have been
Yeah.
Crimson Vow.
Yeah, it would be Crimson Vow. So yeah, it was. Uh-oh. You doing all right, Scryfall? Well, Scryfall's having some issues.
I'm pulling it up. I'm pulling it up too. Oh,
Yeah.
wrong website. I never want to go to the actual arena website. Crimson Vow Commander. You said it had blood?
Yeah, it was one of the blood token ones. Here we go. Okay. Also, Donald, Herald of Wings, just another thing that copies creature spells.
Hmm.
Just
Okay.
it's 4 mana. Most people aren't gonna play it, but you got like a
Sure.
and now I can double flying creatures. There is a flying deck. It's not like super great, but
It exists, and
it definitely
there'd be
exists,
no
and-
reason to not push it a little more.
Yeah, I mean, Camber has partner with the other person, but your opponent's creature dies, you make blood tokens.
Hmm.
Like, what is glass cast hurting for anyone? The
Yeah.
vampire board wipe. Like, none of these cards are like extremely good per se, but it's one of those things that's like it's an already kind of like struggling archetype. It has very limited number of cards that work in standard, historic, whatever.
Yeah.
What's gonna hurt adding, Scion of? Oh, that's a treasure token. Never mind. I
Yeah.
thought it was a blood token, but yeah, like
Oh, science. Well, I see the card you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like there's lots of cards in those sets that are like these aren't really that broken. Like why? Because it was great. I think this was like there were mixed feelings about this. Was the brawl decks for Throne of Eldraine? Do you remember those?
oh yeah, because the brawl decks were all
Legal
the
in standard.
legal and standard, which that I wasn't a huge fan of.
Well, I think that would still be fine. Like, I actually don't mind if they make supplementary products legal and standard.
Okay.
Like, I don't mind, because it's not... My thing is, as long as they aren't, like, short printing it, that's a whole other problem. But, like,
Yeah.
the fact is like, well, it's not like a supplementary set is
Yeah.
being added in. It's a supplementary product with a set list of cards, meaning if I need a Corvold, I know I'm going to get one when I buy
Yeah.
this product. I'm not like having to like try and pull a mythic out of an extra set in standard or something like that.
That's true.
I
And
know
then-
I'm gonna be able to get it.
But you remember that they had the new player starter decks that they would give away at game stores,
Mhm.
and cards that were printed in there would be legal in standard, even though they weren't printed anywhere else.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah, it was like really weird because like you'd occasionally run into that playing at local events.
Yeah.
You're like, really? That card's legal? And then you'd call a
Yeah.
judge and they'd be like, yeah, it's legal. I'm like, what was it in? And it was in the new player starter deck. I'm like,
Yep.
all right. Good to know. I mean, it's a 1-mana 1/1 with haste, so it's not like it mattered in the
Yeah, it's-
2 turns from then. But it's like, okay, that's a card like that exists.
Or then like from the Midnight Hunt one, they had like the Leonore Autumn Sovereign, which is just like this 4-cost 0/4 that just puts a counter on your creatures. Like,
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that I think could be in. So I think that was a really good pick. I actually didn't even think about that kind of stuff with the commander decks, but would definitely be happy to see that. But moving on with the list, my number 4 pick is everybody's favorite Planeswalker for 2 mana, Ren and 6.
yeah.
But as a person who owns 4 Ren and 6 in paper and will be vastly disturbed by when they get reprinted in Double Masters later this year, I don't care actually, but I want them to reprint it because that card shouldn't be like over $100 a piece. But
I want quadruple masters. I want my packs to be as like thicker than my phone.
I love that.
And
There's
I
4
want-
rares in a pack and they're $40 a piece.
I want my packs to be as thick as the original Game Boy and cost just as much.
I love it. I love the idea. Wizards, send the royalty checks, but I really want Ren in 6 because I think, and I want to say with the caveat that I also want fetch lands. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I'm perfectly fine if red green gets a boost because you know what color combination sucks really hard on its own right now? Red green. You know what sucked for most of the format's history? Red
Yeah.
green. There was red green aggro decks, and albeit there's a red green aggro is still a thing. Red green shamans is a thing. Teamer decks exist. Red green is the base colors for the Niv Mizzet deck. It's like Ren and 6. Even if you look at it right now without fetch lands, not that amazing relative to like other things you could be doing. Like we're in a format where Blood Chief's Thirst is main deckable.
Yeah.
Like that's a thing that you can do, and that you can't really do that in Modern because you need your thing to be instant speed. But in the current format, like we have answers that we can play that are good in general that answer Ren and 6. And like if we're gonna have things like Unholy Heat and Dragon's Rage Chandler, like we might as well have Ren and 6. And we
Yeah.
have the cycling lands, like the single color 1 mana cycling lands. So I think it'd be a really fun thing for decks to have, and I think it would make deck building a little bit more interesting for for the red green decks. Because just having a way to answer, just having like a way to like pressure a control deck that isn't a creature is super big. I feel like because that's a big thing that like right now aggro decks are basically non-existent in historic.
Oh, and then
Because
it comes down early.
yeah, you get to play it on like if you're on the play, you get to play it on turn 2. Your opponent will not have an answer for it on turn 1 unless they're playing Spell Pierce. But control decks tend to not play Spell Pierce. And it's a way of gaining card advantage, albeit this is in the form of lands. Like, but like you have to build your mana base in such a way that you can take advantage of it. And even with the new channel lands, I don't even think that would be all that like ridiculous. Of just like, well, I cycle a land, I +1, I get the land back. So like you have this like engine, it can deal with small threats. It's like it's a really good card that I think would actually be a really healthy presence to give red green X base decks an actual good way of combating the opponent. And it also doesn't get hit with Divine Purge, which is really, really big. We need threats that don't get hit with Divine Purge in the format for the other strategies, because that is by and large the biggest menace in historic right now is Divine Purge. But any thoughts you have on Red and 6? Do you have any experience
Yeah,
playing?
no, I see that. I mean, I think a lot of what you said is um completely like valid. Like it the removal is there, and it's commonly enough played that it's not gonna sit down and necessarily be a menace to the
Exactly.
format, but it's going to provide you a tool in decks that need it against decks that might have troubles dealing with it. And then if you're playing best of one, they have to dedicate slots to this card that they might not necessarily play against.
Well, they could
or
just play
sideboard
Portable
slots.
Hole.
Yeah, true.
Like Portable
True.
Hole is another card. Like that's even a card that sees a lot of play in Modern because it is
Yeah.
so versatile. But it's just like, well, like we have literally every
Yeah.
in every answer we have for it in Modern, we have them in Historic
Yeah, that's true.
because they're all fairly recent. They only very recently templated cards to be able to target planeswalkers more. I'd say more effectively.
Mhm.
And I think that'd be perfectly reasonable. Like between Unholy Heat, Blood Thief, Chief's Thirst, Portable Hole, we have even what's its name, Fateful Absence.
Yeah.
Like we have even that. Like decks already play the answers to this card, but it would force them to have to use them there.
Mhm.
And you don't come away with nothing, because my biggest thing right now is whenever I play an aggro deck and I have to run up against control. At this point, the running rule on stream is I will concede the match to control because I would rather do literally anything else with my time.
Yeah.
It's just a waste of time. Because unless I'm gonna really sit there and want to play 50 minutes worth of the match and probably still lose to their top deck Divine Purge at any moment, it's like this isn't like you have to be playing very specific decks to combat what they're doing, and most decks just will not have tools to do that. And Ren and 6 is the example of a type of tool that you can pressure a control deck without having to overcommit to something like a Divine Purge. But let's move on. What's your number 3 card you'd like to add to Historic or
So I
thing?
think, yeah, no. So I think number 3, I'm gonna just say an entire mechanic, and I'm going to tack on an additional card
Okay,
that I think would be good for other decks as well.
sure.
So I think a mechanic that was very, very briefly touched on was in original Theros. Yeah, it was in all the sets of original Theros, or just 2 of them. Was inspired.
Mm,
So the inverse of when this creature becomes tapped, like we've seen on Magna or Amara, is when this creature becomes untapped.
sure.
Um, and the primary reason for the primary way a lot of these cards are played on Arena is with vehicles.
Yeah.
And in fact, people build mono black commander decks in paper with King Makar, and they call it "Dude, Where's Makar?" Um,
That's great.
yeah. So the additional card that I want to tack onto this is Springleaf Drum.
Mm, okay.
Because Springleaf Drum isn't even exactly like
It would
like
be
we
played like a lot, but
it would yeah, no, it would be played like, but we have the blue one, we have Dwara Sentinel, and I think there's another one that does the similar effect.
yeah, we have there's another 1-mana green creature that's similar to Jwari Sentinel
Yeah, and it's
or Jasper
obviously,
Sentinel, but
yeah, Jesper Sentinel, sorry. And I mean, like I said, Amara and Magda are the 2 ones that really stand out to me.
hmm
Amara is less played than Magna. It's more of a
today's day and age at least. It was
yeah.
played a lot with those effects and before.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like it supports these cards. Maybe you bring in these inspired cards, maybe in some kind of Theros themed, what have you. Not all of them are super good, but I mean, there's a few standouts. I mean, obviously there's King Makar, and it makes the gold
hmm
tokens, which I don't know if you realize, but gold tokens are incredibly superior to treasures in every way. Uh,
But do they like not require you to tap them to
you
activate them?
don't need to tap them. So
Yeah,
when
because
you
that's a
tap,
big. That's the key difference is that you can tap them for other things like your
yep,
Moonsnare prototype and still get the mana off of them.
yep. Then there's Disciple of Deceit, which is what's the effect where you pay transmute?
There
It
you go.
just turns any permanent card, any non-land card in your hand into a transmute card.
No, I think
Uh,
yeah, I think because I remember that being a really interesting build around that people were. I believe
mhm.
you even brought a few of those to testing back when
Yes,
Theros Standard.
yeah, a big one. Yeah, the two that I really liked were, well, 3 I guess, were King Makar, Arbiter of the Ideal, and Disciple of Deceit. And
Mm,
since they were all 3 within blue black,
sure. No,
um,
yeah, I think that. No, I think those all would be great. I think it was a really fun mechanic that I think it didn't resonate with a lot of people,
mm,
especially competitive players, because like the difference between Magda and an inspired card is that you can get immediate value off of Magda, where you
yes,
can't get that off the inspired cards. At
that's
least,
correct. Yeah,
in most settings, the removal spell disrupts it. But I still think it would be interesting to see. I'd actually love to see that mechanic, maybe some new cards with it.
that would be great. Yeah, because
Yeah.
we already know there's this, and it feels like, with a lot of these effects, like a couple of them are really strong, right?
Mhm.
Arbor the Ideal was strong, but it was on a 6 cost creature. King Makar was pretty strong, and it was only a 4 cost, but it was on a 2/3 with like no other abilities.
Yeah, like it was very clearly that they didn't push any of these cards, and
Yeah, they
albeit
didn't.
Theros was a fairly low overall power level block,
Yeah,
because
I
that
mean it's
was
it's the block that brought us Tribute, which is
yeah.
probably
Yeah, it's not a great mechanic, but it also brought us Devotion on the other hand, which is a really good mechanic, but I feel they did much better the second time around. But
yeah.
that was one that resonated with people really well. No, I think that's yeah. I would love to see like just the mechanic return, especially maybe get some original cards with it. Might be
Yeah.
good. Maybe a few of the callbacks, but I think the one takeaway there is I do think Springleaf Drum would be a really fun addition
Yeah.
because I,
Or
I think that'd be a really strong presence in the format.
Mantle of Paradise.
Yeah, even that would be a really
Or is
good
it
one.
Paradise Mantle? One of the two.
Yeah, Paradise Mantle. But I think, yeah, that would also be an interesting one. That one requires you to equip, and then the creature can do it, but it would do the same effective thing with Magda
Yep.
as a Springleaf Drum, just with a little more investment. I think that'd be quite strong, and I think that'd add a lot of fun to the format. I think it's just having more options. And again, one thing to note with Springleaf Drum that I would really like is that, so say we play our Magda deck, the thing that's really, really good about that is that, like, it's just another tool for something like a green based or red based aggressive deck to curve out faster and have a better chance at playing out a game against these, like, what honestly are the quite favored mid range and control decks. Because if I could go like turn 1 Drum, turn 2 Magda, play a 2-drop, play and then untap, play a 5-drop, like, yeah, like, I'm gonna get out ahead of those things like Divine Purge and counter spells and other things. And now we have to put the control decks on the back foot. And I think that's what the format needs desperately.
And I think
It's more tools
and
to
I
do
think
that.
too is then you're not forcing yourself to dip into like green or blue, just any secondary color that might mess up your mana base and ruin the consistency.
Yeah, you could even, yeah, like, that would give you like a reason to stay mono red.
Yeah.
But it would also help you improve your color fixing because Springleaf Drum has 1 mana of any color.
Yep.
So I think it would be overall a very healthy addition to the format, even if it was just Springleaf Drum from that entry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it'd be, again, just giving more tools to those decks that, because like that even gives you more, like, because it feels like right now, unless you're Arclight Phoenix or food, like black green food, it's just like, you don't have enough power early on in the game to justify
Yeah.
your existence most of the time. And Springleaf Drum is the perfect kind of card to be like, well, I may not have the most powerful things in the early game, but by golly, do I power up to the mid game really quickly. Like, that would
Yep.
be a really good addition to the format, I feel. But
Mm-hmm.
moving on, my number 3 spot. Speaking of powerful early game cards, and I know this is a card that is super divisive in general, but I would like to see Ragavan the Nimble Pilferer
Okay.
in historic, and I think I have a really good case for this. Not just because I'm a Ragavan stan and I own 4 copies of it and play it in every modern tournament. Uh, I'm also building a Ragavan EDH deck. I love it so much. But the point is that I feel like in historic, there are actually very few powerful 1-drops. Dragon's Rage Chandler is probably in a vacuum tied with Cauldron's Familiar. And like Llanowar Elves is kind of in there. And then blue has nothing. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
black has, like, I guess Knight of the Ebon Legion if you count it, but the problem is like the difference between the 1-mana creatures you see in like black green food is that they're synergistic, and that's what makes them powerful. You have Dragon's Rage Chandler, which in historic is not nearly as powerful. If you can spike hitting Delirium, which is not as easy in that form as is, say, in modern, where it's dirt easy to hit Delirium, it's really not that impressive of a card all by itself. And we don't have any good 1-drops. That's why the aggro decks are suffering so much. Is that they have to rely on playing Llanowar Elves to get to a 3-drop faster. That's what the aggro decks do, and if your 1-mana thing isn't applying much pressure other than accelerating you, that can be a little bit of a problem. So I think Ragavan is a powerful enough card that it would pick up the pace for these aggro decks, where they're like, well, if I'm on the play, I'm gonna go Den of the Bugbear Ragavan, and you better have something, because if you don't, I'm gonna run away with the game. And the thing is though, in our format, we have that something. We have Unholy Heat, we have Fatal Push, we have Portable Hole, we have playing a Cauldron Familiar, we have, like, just ways to combat that really, really well, because the format is fundamentally about being on the battlefield. Just like modern. Modern is about the battlefield. And that's what, because, like, I'll tell you, as a person who plays Ragavan all of the time, if I'm playing a matchup where I need to play against other creatures, Ragavan's the worst creature in my deck. Like,
Yeah.
by and large. And I sideboard them out. Because you just have to. It's a liability. Sometimes in some matchups, you'll keep them in, and if you're on the play, and you'll take out some Dragon's Rage Chandlers, because you can play one on turn 1 and just kill everything that gets in its way, but You can use, arguably you'll see the same thing in historic at times, but it's just like, well, decks already play all that removal. So it's just like, and it's all considered very efficient by the format standards. So I think it would be a really fun, powerful, fun addition to the format that would help give cheap creature decks more outs. And if it does start hitting those, because rarely do you ever cast the spells you hit off of a
Yeah.
Ragavan. It's about getting a treasure and ramping. And I think it'd be really good, just like Ren and 6, it would be another really good way for these red-based creature decks to be able to combat the control decks. Because I'll be honest, as a person who plays a lot of Historic, and I play a lot of creature decks, running into blue-white control is like, it's a death sentence 100% of the time. Like, it's the win rates that deck puts up against certain types of creature decks is just like absurd, and having powerful, cheap threats is the best way to combat that without just outright having to ban or rebalance cards.
Yeah, I'm looking. While you were talking, I was taking a quick look at the available one drops.
Yeah, it's the murderer's row as it is.
Yeah, and it's like, sure, there's good cards in here, but I wouldn't like, if you're talking about the turn they take impact, the turn you have to deal with them, they're not really one drops. It's just you can play them for one. You could play them on turn one if you wanted to, but like, what are like, is Grim Lavamancer or Ravenous Squirrel really a one drop? I don't think so. Things that I would consider, those would be like those must answer threats. The other things that I see people playing on turn one are like Esper Sentinels or Shambling Gas, and those are like 1/1s. So
Yeah, like you look at like I'm reading through the list as well right now. So just like out of the list I'm looking at, we have technically Allosaurus Shepherd, also had
yeah,
Life's Bounty. At one point a Boreal Grazer, and I'm sure we'll see it in the future. Blazing Root Walla, Beaumont Courier, Cauldron Familiar, Champion of the Perished, um, Cursebound Witch, Crypt Breaker, Delver of Secrets, Death Shadow doesn't count, Dragon Master Outcast, Dragon Rage's Chandler, and like there are lots of one drops, just like you said,
yeah,
Edgewall Innkeeper,
yeah. Definitely
Elvish
stuff that people
Reclaimer.
can play.
There's things you can play, but there's nothing that like, if I don't kill it on turn one, it's not a big deal. But like something like a Ragavan is like, if you don't kill it on turn one, you're gonna lose. Like, or
Yeah.
rather, your win rate drops significantly every turn it stays on the battlefield. And it's just like, and the fact that it has dash is another thing. That's actually
hmm
one of the most common plays with a Ragavan is dashing it for value. Like if
Oh
you
yeah.
know your opponent is sitting on Supreme Verdict, you're just like, ha, that's sweet dash, hit you for two, get a
hmm
treasure, thought sees you, or even my favorite, hit a treasure, cast your Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, plus and draw a card.
My favorite one drop that they released, and it's actually out of the new set in recent memory, not just the new set, is Reinforced Ronin, because it
Oh yeah.
synergizes all the nonsense that I like. Because Oni Cult Anvil says when an artifact leaves the battlefield, not when it dies. If I'm playing the Dragon Spark Reactor in a deck that can actually afford to play a card that slow, it enters the battlefield every turn. So
No, I agree. I think that'd be a really fun one. And one thing I wanted to caveat, speaking of modern threats that I think would be good for the format, I'd also think like I didn't think of this one, but Dothy Voidwalker would also be a really good one
oh yeah.
because it's a rogue, so it also has tribal synergies in the format
hmm
that exist already, and it would introduce just a uniquely powerful card that would give the black decks a little more of an edge than because they outside of black green food there really is no good black decks in historic, at least that are consistently good. So I think that was just another one that came to mind. But yeah, there's not enough one drops that are like meaningfully impactful in the
Yeah.
format, and so like that's why Supreme. That's one part of the reason why Divine Purge and like Wrath of God are so good is that, well, if the threats coming down on turns 1, 2, and 3 aren't like really pushing your opponent, then like, or they don't have haste, like follow up from a wrath. Like it's like that's what makes those wraths so powerful, and that's again where that dash comes in. Where like if your opponent wraths you, just untap, dash a Ragavan in for 2 or whatever it might be. But I'd even be happy with like something like a Zergo Bellstriker wouldn't even be all that bad. But
Yeah.
that'd be just I want more red aggressive elements in general, and I think Ragavan would be the perfect red aggressive element for the format from a power level perspective, as well as making turn ones like where the cheap interaction matters more than it already does, because it already does matter, just really taxing it. But let's move on to your number 2.
Okay, so I am going to. I went for a mechanic, and now I'm just gonna go for a set.
Okay.
And I just want Shadows over Innistrad, please.
I would love the Shadows over Innistrad remaster, where they take that and Eldritch Moon.
Yeah, a remaster.
Remember when they said they were doing that set?
Or
They got rid of it?
Or Eldritch Moon, or like smash them together, like.
Yeah, just the remaster experience, just like they did with the other two set blocks. I think that'd be really cool.
Investigate's great. Delirium's great. Maybe not Emrakul. She can go away.
Well, that's the point of the remaster. They they treat her just like the Smuggler's Copter and whatnot, where they just omit them from the list.
I want to cast Liliana Last Hope again. Like.
Yeah, that's another great example of, by the way, of a card that would be really good to pressure the control decks.
Yeah.
Or just like, I'll just play this 3-mana Planeswalker that if it ultimates, I win.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's it. That's what happens. Like, it's just another way of doing that. But I agree. I think that whole set, that whole block would be really, really fun.
Yeah, that whole block was great.
Well, because you just think about it. Yeah, like Traverse the Ulvenwald would be there.
Mm-hmm.
Tireless Tracker. Both really good cards. Mindrack Demon, which is actually a really playable 4-drop for being an important converted mana cost total in the format. I think it would be really good overall.
It's funny. You mentioned Traverse, and it brought back memories of, like, I had dropped out of Magic for a little while, and I was getting back in when I heard they were doing Innistrad again, and I was watching the previews. And they previewed Traverse the Ulvenwald, and I remember saying, I have no idea what I want to do once Innistrad is out, but I know what I do know is I want to be casting Traverse the Ulvenwald.
Oh yeah, I own 4 copies of that card still, because I picked them up because I was just like, because my idea was like, well, Dragon Rage Chandler and Unholy Heat are really good in Modern, and like Delirium's really easy to get. Like, what's stopping me from playing this card? Like, especially now that like shit like Buseju exists, like where it's just like, well, if I'm playing a green-red base deck like with Ren and 6 and these things, like why wouldn't I play a tutor that can go grab a Tarmogoyf or a utility land? Like that seems like a really good thing to include in my deck. And even back then, I loved playing that card in Standard. I loved playing it in Pioneer. I love playing it anywhere I'm allowed to play it.
And I mean, the block in general, even just Shadows itself, is just full of these just all-star cards. Like, Open the Armory, Always Watching, the
Grapple with the Past was really
Grapple with the Past, Flip Avacyn. I was only in white, and that's just in white, which is normally the weakest color, right? So...
Exactly. It's like like if I look over, Shadows over Innistrad, like it was a real. It's a set that I think a lot of people, don't remember being really, really good, like. But like if you look at rarities, like we have the original Arlen Cord, which was a solid card that never found a home, but could find a home. We have Nahiri the Harbinger.
Yep.
We got Olivia Mobilized for War, Relentless Dead, the Gitrog monster, which is technically already legal in Arena.
Mm-hmm. True,
but
true.
Seasons Past, which was another interesting card a lot of people liked. Anguished Unmaking and Always Watching.
Yeah.
2 really good cards. We have the Check Lands, which I think would actually be really good.
Actually,
for Arena, because we don't have the fast lands that correspond with those colors, and these could be played pretty successfully because you have shock lands and other things. We have a few of these other cards, but like Declaration in Stone, Diregraph Colossus. I think Drownyard Temple would add an interesting element to certain ramp decks. Gosh, where was the other? Fevered Visions be another good one. Falconwrath Gorger would actually be an interesting aggressive one drop.
I get why they wouldn't want to though, because this has old werewolves in it.
I get
But
that, yeah. It's
but
but
if it's
they
but if it's remastered,
but they did. But here's the thing: is they templated that new one to help flip these.
yeah, that's true.
The legendary guy, and plus none of these werewolves. I think like there was only the one, the green dude, that could pay 3 to look at your top couple cards for.
Yeah, that was the only one that really got played.
Exactly, that was the only one that was really ever worth anything, and I think that would be fine because I feel like if you're adding it to like just regular constructed Magic, I think most people would be fine with that.
I mean, and I want to play Triskaidekaphobia. Like,
Yeah. Well, by the way, the list goes on. Prized
yeah,
Amalgam, Rattle Chains.
yeah.
You have. Well, technically, gosh, you had a couple of other things here. We've got Thing in the Ice,
Thing in the Ice, yes.
which To the Slaughter, which would probably see some play. Like that's just I just went through all the rares, and I didn't even touch Eldritch Moon. Like if we look at MTG Eldritch Moon set
Yeah,
list.
looking this up right now.
Like where are we at?
Oh God, Decimator of Provinces.
Yeah, we have. Let's go. I'm
All the
sorting by
Emerge
rarity.
cards?
Yeah, you got all the emerge cards, which is a beloved mechanic, by the way.
Yeah, I love Emerge.
Grim Flayer, Ishkana, Liliana. You have, good lord, you have Tamio, Bedlam Reveler. Bedlam Reveler would invent whole new archetypes in the format.
Yeah, that's true. It was
Because you have Faithless Looting. It would be the one place where we could play that again. Collective Brutality.
Yes.
Eldritch Evolution. Technically, Harmless Offering's already legal, but we have all the spirits. That's another thing we haven't mentioned yet.
Mm-hmm.
You got all the spirits, like Selfless Spirit. You have this is actually a pretty notable one. Sigarda's Aid would be legal.
Oh.
So
yeah.
you would officially be able to play Hammer Time. Spell
Yeah.
Queller, another solid one. Summary Dismissal, a notable, interesting card. But like you have Voldarin Pariah. Gosh, even in the commons and uncommons, you have Blessed Alliance. You have the other emerge creatures. I omitted it, but Kozilek's Return would be probably a pretty good one for the format.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just so many cards that would be really interesting to add into the format that realistically wouldn't break anything, but it would definitely improve and open windows for new archetypes. Because one thing is we are very much we're very much in a place where this format is super graveyard based, and I imagine that we'll likely see some bans in the relative future that target those types of things. Like I could see like the Cat Oven deck getting a little bit of a hit. I could even see I see Control getting a hit as well as Arclight Phoenix. Like I see all those things probably at some point in the future as they add more cards to the format getting hit. I could even see them having to ban Faithless Looting if they add this block in. But
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
but at the same time, like I think the positives would far outweigh any potential negatives of adding in Shadows over Innistrad block remastered to the format. I think that'd be a really good add, and I think people would absolutely love. Because that's what everybody wanted Double Feature to be. If it was a curated, all of Innistrad sets in one big set. And then that could have just been thrown on Arena, and everyone would have been super happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on, though.
Yes.
My number 2 pick. Another divisive card. Another red card. It is the thing that makes all things red. It's Blood Moon. Technically, it doesn't make anything red, but it makes them in the mountains for sure. I feel, and this will probably become a bigger problem over time on Arena, but also just looking at deck lists. You look at a blue-white control deck, can you guess how many basic lands they play?
Well, based on the ones that I played against, I only ever saw 2, and the games went pretty long, so...
They play 2, and now they play less.
Wow.
The control lists I've been seeing with Kamigawa play maybe 1 basic.
Jesus.
And because they're cutting their second island for a copy of Otawara. They're trying to fit a Gonjo in. which it's a little awkward with Archmage's Charm, but if you're like, well, I'm only going to play it if I absolutely need to before turn 4, you can sort of look at it in certain ways. But it is getting to a point where it's just like, well, even like the 2-color decks, like that, they live with no fear in their mana base. And I feel like one of the things that we could do to the format is you could add things like fetch lands in to put decks in a position where they can play more basic lands, right? But we do need a balancing factor. Even now, I feel like a balancing factor would be good because, one of the things that makes certain color combinations so good is that they get to play all these like non-basic lands for free, and like there's no way to take them back. So I think Blood Moon would be a force for mostly good. I could see it being Magus of the Moon if you really wanted the effect, but not the Blood Moon. But I think in today's day and age, there's enough incidental interaction with artifacts that I don't think Blood Moon is too hard to answer. I think when way back in the dark, when it was a bad card anyway, enchantments were a lot harder to deal with. But nowadays, like you have main deck answers to enchantments, like that you just play incidentally. That's not even why they're there.
Yeah, they don't even say enchantment on them.
They just say like non-land permanent or whatever. But like you just have answers to those things. So I think it would be a force of balancing where it would just your mana bases would have to be a little more honest. But I do feel like, especially with the incoming new Capenna, where it's heavily rumored that it's going to feature the other 5 Triomes, which is a little worrying because this is a topic for probably another video, but I feel the Triomes have been a really negative thing for Magic, especially for formats with fetch lands. Because I don't know if you know this, in Modern, the best deck in the format is a 4-color deck. And it gets to play, and it has no mana problems whatsoever because it gets to play Ketria Triome and Ralgren Triome, and Lord fucking forbid if they get to play Bant Triome. Like that would be so. It's getting to a point where that stuff, like the drawback is it comes into play tap, but the upside is you get to play Omnath with literally no downside. But great, and you're playing Yorion anyway, so like you can fit all these things as 1-ofs or 2-ofs in your mana base. But I think Blood Moon would be a really good way of balancing that out in a format because it kind of does it. It's a little trickier in Modern where like we have things like Utopia Sprawl that see play in those decks to fix their mana with timing and layers restrictions. But like it does feel like that would be, in at least historic, maybe a force for good versus a force for evil. I think it would be a really solid addition. You have any thoughts on Blood Moon at all?
I mean, I have a up and down relationship with Blood Moon. Obviously, I have.
I'm a Blood Moon stan. I'm biased.
I have been on the wrong side of Blood Moon before. I have also played 3-color decks with only basic lands, and the Blood Moon player has been very confused. Like,
what's really funny is I have it's not necessarily a Blood Moon story, it's a back to basics story, but
okay.
I went there's the last time I got to play like truly competitive tabletop Legacy it was me and another player, a young guy named Ben that I think you know him from Yu-Gi-Oh.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. We were gonna go play Legacy, and we were both playing Blue-Black Death Shadow. Now I had 2 Underground Seas, which is wasn't nothing for me at the time, but he couldn't get them. He couldn't get any. Couldn't find anybody who had them. Couldn't, of course, afford them or anything like that. So we're like, whatever. You're playing your Watery Graves because you're Death Shadow anyway, but we'll play 2 basics in his deck, whatever. And then he makes the top 8 of that event. We both make the top 8 of that event, but he makes the top 8 specifically because he played against back to basics 3 rounds in a row. In the last 3 rounds, and he fetched his basics both in all those games. Where he's just like, "Oh, you're playing back to basics. I'll fetch a swamp and I'll fetch an island and get bent." Like,
it's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's a force for. I think those effects can be a positive element in a competitive environment. I do understand from a casual player perspective why they're not necessarily very fun.
Well, yeah, no. If you're playing in a group, and particularly if you're playing casual, you're probably playing Commander, and you're setting rules for what kind of games you want to play. if you're playing more geared toward the mindset of competitive, there should be punishment for going too deep on something, then you're going to be comfortable with your opponent, in your play group playing Blood Moon anyway. And if you're not comfortable with that kind of thing, you want to do cool stuff and you don't want to necessarily have to worry about that kind of thing, people aren't in your play group aren't playing that. But yeah,
Exactly.
in a competitive environment, there needs to be a risk reward. And in a format with no risk reward on your mana base, it's just the Wild West. And
It is. It gets out of hand very quickly once your mana's too good, because that is a thing that exists.
Yeah.
Especially in older formats. Like, a lot of people never think of that as being a problem, but that is a net negative for competitive Magic when mana's too good. Like, Standard with Dark Jeskai and, Mardu Blue and Abzan Red and all these ridiculous 4-color decks in Standard.
That was exactly the format I was going to bring up, because it was like Ravnica and Khans. So
it wasn't even Ravnica, it was Battle for Zendikar. You had the Tango lands were fetchable.
Oh, yeah.
So you had the Khans 3-color lands to help fix a little bit, but then you had these like really funky Tango mana bases where like you were playing where you could fetch out dual lands that you were usually tapped until turn 3, but it was just like this really like, and like, don't get me wrong, like that was it fun at times? Yes. Did it get old very quickly? Absolutely. But at the same time, it was just like, we really... Mana can be too good, and that can be a problem for competitive Magic, because it can homogenize. Luckily, Standard rotates, and that was right before rotation that happened, so it was a short-term problem. But you look at Modern right now, Modern is ridiculous with how, like, disrespectful to Blood Moon they are, but also, like, in that format, we just have, a million answers to it. But you look at Historic, and mana bases either suck, because they don't have the right combination of dual lands, or they're just so good that it, like, Blue-White Control's mana base is so good that it's a joke.
Oh my god.
How easy their mana base is at this point. But, so effects like Blood Moon can be a very healthy thing for a competitive environment to keep decks with access to good mana bases in check.
The first time I saw Strict Proctor into play my Lotus Field,
I was like, so disgusting.
I'm like, that's kind of cool. The first time I saw it, and then the 10th time I'm like, and concede.
Well, even better is when you're the Heliod Company player, and then you find out Strict Proctor counters all your Soul Warden triggers.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing that gets me about that combo that makes me feel like they have to probably ban Lotus Field, or take Hexproof away. I think that would probably be a rebalance option.
I think removing Hexproof would be...
Well, because if I could hit it with, like, a Cleansing Fire or whatever, like, I think it would be fine. Like, I think it would be totally fine if that was a thing, but, like, the fact that, like, they get to play, like, the sideboard hate for a deck that now just has ceased to exist because of it. Like, it's the fact that Strict Proctor is so good against one of the better competitive decks that got to play Collected Company, and it also makes their mana base really powerful. But yeah. But let's move on. Your number one thing you'd want to add to Historic.
My number one, and we can expand upon this. It is... Oh, you okay? My cat's sneezing. We could expand upon this. We could. It is part of a cycle of cards, and I'm with what I know about the ban list and what cards are available in Historic. We were talking about Hammer Time, but I think it is Prime Time.
Oh, the Titans, the Primeval Titan.
Primeval Titan specifically, but I want Titans, because.
They probably wouldn't even be good.
Exactly.
like Primeval Titan would be a sick card in Brawl for sure, but like...
Yeah, but like...
And it would probably get, like, with Castle Garenbrig existing and whatnot, like, it would probably be fine for, like, ramp decks. Yeah, it might even put ramp decks on the map, but...
I mean, you could even play one of those, like, weird decks that's, like, monocolored Golos, but it goes and fetches Cascading Cataracts with the...
Yeah, or you grab the World Tree.
You grab the World... or the World
Tree.
Yeah,
because it's already green anyway, so you can cast your things as well. Yeah, I
And
think
I
that'd
mean,
be a force for good. Just we don't have a ramp deck; it doesn't exist.
no, I mean, yeah, and it's and you could open it up, and it's basically just the deck that focuses on playing haymakers,
Hmm.
like hey, control deck, you need to make sure you're able to deal with
Yeah,
my multiple haymakers every single turn.
yeah, like that would be another way to make cards like Divine Purge more situational, where it's just like,
Yeah.
well, you can have 4 Divine Purges in your deck, but when I smack your ass with a Cultivator Colossus,
Hmm.
you're gonna be really needing to have favored like Fateful Absences.
Yeah.
Or like, you combine that with like, well, I have these prime times, but I also have, Carnage Tyrant,
Yep.
sick counter spells, sick spot removal. You're gonna have to put an emphasis on Wrath of God again. Like I feel like that's like the where that would be another way to improve the format health
Hmm.
without having to change anything else, but just by adding in things that are worth doing. Because like if
Yeah.
I was building a deck like where I'm like, well, I have Castle Garenbrig, so I'm gonna build this deck that's like able to like ramp out these Primeval Titans. So it's just like, well, if I can ramp out a 6 mana green creature like Primeval Titan, I could probably ramp out Carnage Tyrant too, just while I'm at it.
Hmm.
Like that'd just be a reasonable sideboard option that I
Yeah.
play as maybe a singleton in my main deck. But I think that'd be really cool actually. I think that would be quite good because we don't have lands like Valakut to be worried about.
Yeah, and I mean, and Field the Dead got banned,
Yeah,
so
like
it's not
like
like
it wouldn't be degenerately broken, but it would add like a reasonable level of ramp to the format.
yeah. I mean, and it's
And the
and
other Titans would
I
also be just fun for Brawl, but like I think like Sun Titan would probably be
yeah,
potentially like that'd probably be the worst one for comboing.
yeah. I
Like
mean, there's a Reanimator deck, like I think it's an Esper primarily, but it can be in other color combinations. But I mean, obviously, like Frost Titan's still good, but of the five, it's the worst. And like, but
yeah,
even like Inferno, Grave, Sun, like
they're all reasonable Magic cards for 6 mana. And like
yeah,
one thing that I also remember is like you look at Reanimator decks in the format. Like they have Sarah's Emissary, which isn't good. It just isn't. It's sad. It's just like it doesn't stop Wrath of God from killing it. But like the thing is like if you have like things that are worth cheating out, like a Titan, but are also reasonable to just cast.
yeah,
Like you know what I would love to reanimate is a Primeval Titan because you know what reanimating that does? It means the Grave Titan in my hand became castable.
yeah,
So if I have a Primeval Titan, they have to answer it, and if they answer that, I'm like, all right, I'll play Grave Titan, or I'll
yeah.
play Goldspan Dragon, or I'll play whatever I'm gonna play.
It is an interesting situation where you have this digital, this unique digital format, and you can put these iconic powerful cards in there without it being something that's like, oh, you're gonna shatter the meta.
Yeah, you don't have to worry because the power level of a format like Historic is already super high. So
Yeah,
like there's a very low risk to put things that were all like the Titans from those core sets. Like they're not like gonna be these super dominant forces they were in Standard, right?
yeah,
They could be good. They could be. They aren't even guaranteed to be good, but it would still
yeah,
be a fun and interesting thing. Like I think those would make a great like 5 card part of a historic anthology. Where you just
yeah,
throw them in there because people you get them all at once for a flat fee, and that's people really like that. It's very transparent, but and it's also just like really fun. But you don't have to worry about putting them in standard where they could be problematic because even by today's standards, those are all very good cards.
oh yeah,
But I think we'll move on though because I have a number one.
okay,
I
all right.
want the other 8 Elder Titans. Where are they? Why did I only get a blue-green one and a black-red one? They hinted that there were others, and they just didn't make the set cut.
Yeah,
I want my Titans. I want them all, and I want them now. And I don't care if they're digital-only designs, if they're tabletop designs.
I like how we both ended on Titans.
You're damn right. I want my Titans, because you know what? Uro, mistake. Croxa, perfect. Perfect card, Croxa.
I do like
The
Croxa.
one card that I'm considering making my commander before I play Ragavan. Croxa. You know why? Because it's great. It's the perfect red and black legendary creature because everything it does is red and black. Its ability to exile cards from the graveyard, quintessentially black. The way it does damage, quintessentially red. It makes them discard, quintessentially black. it is a 6/6 with a drawback, quintessentially red. Like, it's perfect in every way. But I want to see the rest of them because I think Escape is one of the best graveyard mechanics we've ever had.
Yeah, I really like Escape.
I really, really like it. And I really like, because to me, it was very reminiscent of sagas in the way the way they feel. Where sagas are like, these are really cool things. Like, it's a story being told. And it has chapters, and it progresses into this powerful thing. And now we even have the sagas that turn into spirits, and that's even cool in its own way. It's a different take on that same flavor. The Titans were like super cool graveyard because it was just like, they're being imprisoned in the graveyard. And, for you expend these resources and you unlock them and now they come back and it's just super cool.
And that even like works within the story, right? Because in the story, like Elspeth had to escape the underworld and the amount of trouble and sacrifices she had to make to do that.
Exactly. It's like I really, really think it was a missed opportunity to cut them from the set. I get why putting 10 of them in one set is a problem, and I think, and this is again a topic for another video, would be like that would have been something we probably would have seen where they did 5 and 5 if we had a 2-set block. And that's something I'd actually really like to discuss with you in length, maybe in one of our next episodes. Is the really looking at the 3-set, 2-set, 1-set block mentality and how that's really affected Magic. Because I feel like if we had been in a different time frame, and we would have seen all 10 Titans. But I would love to see them because I like the idea of them. I think Kroxa, just like looking how Kroxa plays, right, is that it offers elements that are really good in all sorts of different kinds of matchups. Like, I played a lot in Modern, for example, where it's a really good card because, like, for me in Modern, it's something that I can play that it's going to always trade 1-for-1 with the worst card in their hand, which by itself doesn't sound great, but, like, it can maybe do some damage. And then in my graveyard, it's just like I have this lingering threat that it's just like, well, yeah, you
can cast with Luris.
Yeah, that you can cast with Luris, and like you're just in this position where it's like, well, while I'm beating you down with my other things, like, and forcing you to trade with me 1-for-1, I have this looming threat that once the dust settles, it's gonna come roaring out of my graveyard like it's Miley Cyrus on a wrecking ball, just coming after you. And it's really good, and the play patterns I feel are very healthy. And then with the amount of resources they cost, they feel super reasonable. Uro wasn't reasonable, but that's because they tacked too much onto it. Like, there is I think there is a way you could rebalance Uro that it's fine. And it would be healthy for the format, but like I don't.
And I think something about Escape that is often underplayed is the fact that it is a cast.
It is. It's not like an activated ability.
Yeah,
you have to cast it.
Yep.
And it doesn't leave. If it gets countered, it goes back to your graveyard too.
Yes.
Because it's not like Flashback where it has the drawback of like you're really going in on it.
Or the Jumpstart.
Yeah, Jumpstart the mechanic. As opposed to the set.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel like it was probably the best way we've ever done that. I think like you had Eternalize and whatnot, and Embalm. Yeah, that's the one.
Embalm and Eternalize. Eternalize was the more advanced form.
Yeah, and it's just like those were also really good for their own reasons, but it definitely felt very much like Escape was a really, really good mechanic. And I feel like seeing the other 8 Titans at some point would be really, really fun for the game. And I think it would add a lot of complexity to every format, not just Historic. I think it would be a really healthy presence for Pioneer and Modern and what have you to have more options like that. Though I'd probably foresee they'll end up in Commander decks at some point.
I mean, probably, yeah.
And maybe we'll get those Commander decks on Arena.
Maybe.
I'm just kidding. It'll never happen. Why would they do that? Why would they give us more stuff when they can give us less stuff, right?
I mean, yeah, that's a fair point.
All right. Well, that is our top 5 cards, cycles, sets. It was pretty loose this time around of things we'd want to put into Historic on Arena. We think all these things would be just big bonuses, and Honestly, send me my royalty check, Wizards. I'm expecting it. But
If they watch this, they legally cannot do any of our suggestions.
well, actually, they can.
Oh,
They
okay.
just have to do it in a roundabout way. We're like, well, we've heard the community feedback that we understand that Magic players really want to see a new Jumpstart Historic Horizon sets that actually is sold in booster packs, and not sold to you in the form of you having to buy card sets that you already own every card in just to get wild cards, then to redeem them and make them artificially valuable. But
Oh
whatever.
boy, can't wait to get my next 4 Evolving Wilds.
Can't wait. Does it have a different artwork this time or something? It absolutely doesn't. Oh, it's so great. I love the fact that I have 6 different Duresses in my collection. Can't
Yep.
wait for the 7th. Might have actually already be 7. I haven't looked, but
Yeah,
I remember
that's
I
true.
played an event specifically to win a special version of Duress.
Yes, the old frame.
Yeah,
Right?
we get the old frame. It's not the old frame, it was the old art.
The old art. Yes,
But
I
like
also played in that.
it's like I'm looking at it now and I'm like, well, hey, I rarely get to play Duress anymore, and honestly, like I don't care. Like
Yeah, and now I just play the Mystic Archive one.
exactly, yeah, I play that. I might redeem the Japanese art one because I did that for Negate
That one is
finally.
good. That one is nice.
Where I'm just
yeah.
like, I'll just get that special art one. I might do that with my Inquisition at some point because I play that card a lot. All right, but we're gonna wrap it up. I think that we should be coming back to the fine folks here on Twitch. What we were thinking, like the. Ooh, I don't think I'm available March 6th.
Okay.
So we're aiming for typically an every other week sort of
Mhm.
episode here for the fine folks on Twitch, and then we'll be cutting this and posting parts of it to YouTube. I actually had some technical difficulties that I noticed my recording did not catch Drabynoops' audio for the first 25 minutes of the
Oh,
podcast.
wonderful. You should be able to get the VOD down. So.
I should be able to just fine. I'm hoping it didn't cross over to the Twitch VOD. But, Drabynoops, when can they expect us back, you might think?
I mean, it's like you said, approximately every other week. We can always shift around for our schedules if we need to.
For sure.
If we can't make a stream work, we could always do a special not live edition.
That's true. The classic, the pre-tape.
The pre-tape. But yeah, no, it's trying to keep this consistent, but not so consistent that we have nothing to talk about.
Absolutely. I definitely don't want it to be. I don't necessarily mind. I would love to get to a weekly point, but at that, we would need other content to talk about.
Yeah,
We'll
for
run out
sure.
of shit pretty quickly. But I'm thinking, since we can't do the 6th, because I'm going to be out of town that weekend, how about we do. Are you available the 27th to come out here to the fine folks on Twitch?
We can make it work.
Okay.
I generally do get Sundays off. All the other days of the week are completely random, but I generally get Sundays. And even if I don't get Sundays, I only work in the morning. So.
Absolutely. And then we can always be flexible with the time of day we do this. I'd like to aim for this kind of mid-evening on a Sunday. I like it.
I do like this mid-evening because it gives me a chance to do stuff when we're done.
Absolutely, I agree completely. As well as much easier with our time zone difference. But I appreciate everybody for watching. We did pick up a follower, Pedikin. If you're still with us, of course, want to shout you out one more time. If you want to stay up to date with our content, of course, we'll be having the bi-weekly podcast here. You can go ahead and, if you'd like, type !Discord, YouTube, even Facebook and Twitter, and you can follow my channel, which is where we host this podcast from, and you can stay up to date and watch our live podcast. I also stream where we actually play Magic the Gathering and not just talk about it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and occasionally Drabynoops makes some appearances during those as well. And Drabynoops, where can they find you on the social media you want them to?
I am Drabynoops everywhere. I am willing to let you perceive me, including here on Twitch. I don't primarily do Magic, but I like alliteration, so Magic Mondays is a thing.
Magic Mondays, I love it.
So, but primarily, I will play through a relatively lore-heavy game. Sometimes they're RPGs, sometimes they're games with just a lot of lore elements. I just finished up the main story of Control. I'm going to be moving over to BioShock Infinite, which is also a much shorter game. The Chrono Cross remaster is coming out. I'm going to be playing that at some point. But yeah, if you're looking for Magic, that's Mondays and the podcast. If you're looking for anything else, hop on in.
Absolutely. Are you excited for the Chrono Cross remake?
I am very excited.
I'm sorry, remaster. It's not a remake.
Remaster, yes. Remaster. I'm very excited.
Is that coming to PC?
I believe so. I think
because if it is, I'm gonna play it. I never played
Switch.
That one.
Yeah, I think it's Switch and PC.
Okay.
If I remember correctly.
Because I do remember pissing off people on Reddit when I told everybody it was my favorite, and then when they got angry, I also said I never played it before.
I mean, that just makes you an internet fan.
Exactly. But I think didn't they also? Isn't there a leak of Chrono Trigger remake?
No, people are assuming that if this does well, they'll do that.
I hope so. I'd love to see either just a remaster or a remake.
Yeah, but so they have a bunch of updated like graphics, UI, and music, but it looks like there's also a feature to toggle any of them on and off to
that's good.
really customize your play experience, and also the first official translation of Radical Dreamers, which was the game that inspired Chrono Cross.
Yeah, I remember. Because aren't they calling it that? Radical Dreamers Edition?
Radical Dreamers Edition, yes.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of fans that completely disavow Chrono Cross as a legitimate sequel and only consider Radical Dreamers to be the true sequel. And
it's fair.
God bless them. But
yeah, you know what? Yeah, God bless those internet fans.
I will 100% agree that Chrono Cross was not a great sequel, but it was a good game, and
yeah, it's very similar to Tales of Symphonia 2, where except that game sucked. And it didn't suck because of anything other than it was shoehorned on the Wii, kind of like how Chrono Cross was shoehorned on the DS. I don't like it when Nintendo does that. I don't like that. I mean, the Wii was especially bad, but games clearly designed for the GameCube being shoehorned onto the Wii was a big problem.
Oh God, moving The World Ends With You onto the Switch.
Oh God, did you watch the anime?
We're watching through it right now.
I'm sorry.
No, listen. I've also watched Persona 5 the animation. And if you are doing a quality test between game and anime, between those two series, The World Ends With You is a refreshing, positive experience compared to the Persona 5 one.
That's depressing, but because it's really bad. I tried watching it, and I was like, wait, I remember the art style from the game, but why are there such thick black lines around everything? That feels lazy.
It's fine. I'm mostly just vibing to the music.
That's basically what it is. That's the best part of the anime. But all right, we're gonna wrap it up here for the night. Again, appreciate everybody checking out the stream. Drabynoops, always a pleasure. Of course, go ahead and hit that follow button if you want to stay up to date with us. But other than that, we will see you again soon.
Ta-ta.